As teachers, we know that life skills are vital things that we need to teach to our students. However, it's pretty unclear how or when we're supposed to teach these skills. My name is Chloe Taskoff from Lucky Clover Writing, and you are watching the Expert Educators channel. Today we're talking to Nikki Robertson from Teaching Autism, and she is going to tell us about different ways that she incorporates life skills into the classroom and applicable strategies that you can use tomorrow if you want to. So here we go. Awesome. Okay. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, Chloe.
Thank you for being on Expert Educators today, and we're going to be talking about life skills and why they're important in the classroom, how teachers can use them, just with some of your tips and your experience. So could you just quickly tell us who you are and about your teaching experience?
Sure. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be one of your first guests on here. I'm Nikki and I'm from Wales in the United Kingdom. This is my 10th year of experience with autism, and I have worked in a special education school. So the school was split into two buildings, and I worked specifically with students who were diagnosed with autism. My experience ranges, I've worked with students who are aged between 13 and 17-year-olds. And then I've worked with children who were diagnosed from 3 up to 7 years of age. So I've definitely got a mix of experience. I've also worked with other schools. I've gone out and helped them set up their own classrooms and really provided some outreach support as well.
Awesome. So you really have extensive experience with special education and students with autism. So that's great. Why did you start your business Teaching Autism?
So I didn't start it straight away. I sort of thought that when I was working within the school that everyone sort of had access to the same resources that we had. And I was very much under the illusion that everyone could make these resources that I was able to get out so quickly for my students. And over the years, I quickly realized that my students really benefited when I was providing hands-on, engaging resources and really putting a twist on learning, especially with the curriculum, because some targets are so hard for our students to grasp. So I really had to get creative. And then as I was making these things, especially the crime scenes in the classroom, I had all the other teachers in the school asking me, can you do that in our class? Can you make this for me? Can you make that for me? So all of a sudden I was making resources for other teachers in the school. Now, obviously, like I said, I went out and I provided outreach support to other schools as well. And we had schools visit our classroom. And all these teachers were seeing the resources and they were like, we want those. How can we get those? So I started giving them those resources as well. Then I started posting a few pictures of them just on social media, sharing in some of the special education groups. And all of a sudden, loads of people were just asking me, I want that. How do I do that? How do I make that? So I sort of really realized then that what I had was maybe a little bit more of a gift than what I first anticipated. So Teaching Autism was born just because I really wanted to help all those other special education teachers and the students as well to have the same experiences that my students were having, and just watching them really fall in love with learning. I just wanted to be able to pass that on and help teachers and education professionals and even homeschoolers around the world sort of get that experience too.
That's awesome. And it's kind of cool how you kind of just fell into it. It kind of just happened. It wasn't something that you planned on. Now it's what you spend, so much of your time doing is helping teachers in special education and even parents. On your social media, I see you speaking with parents. They can ask you questions and kind of get your insight on that. So that's really great. Now, we know you're an expert on life skills and special education, one of the many experts. I know it's a question you get asked a lot, why do you think that it's important to teach life skills in the classroom?
So it really struck a chord with me when I moved from the older students down to the younger students. And I think that a lot of teachers who work with young students, they have this awful misconception that people think they have it easy because the children are so little and they're so sweet.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I went down to that age group, I really thought, oh my gosh, they have so much that they need to work on with these children to get to where, you know, the children who were older in my classes were. And for me, I would watch the students and I would see things that they were sort of struggling with. And I thought, how can we get them to independent individuals? And, you know, some of the students who were 15, 16-year-olds that I were working with, they couldn't still pour their own drink and cut their own food. And I was thinking, how can I really sort of start now with these 3, 4, 5-year-olds and get them to a place at 16, 17 where they're cutting their own food and they're able to get dressed themselves. So for me, that played a huge part. And luckily, I was with a great team of staff. We were all on board. We all had the same vision where we just really wanted to ensure that these students were getting the best out of life. So, you know, another common misconception is when people hear life skills, they just think it's washing hands, brushing teeth, getting dressed. And it's so much more than that. And we really thought that we wanted to just put 110% in. We wanted these students to get the best out of life. And, you know, we'd really look at some of these students and the curriculum was asking things of them that they would probably realistically never need in their life, but they weren't having the opportunity to learn to tie their shoelaces or even to find their shoes and put their shoes on and not someone else's shoes, take responsibility for their belongings. So for me, it was just really important that I helped those students get independent as well. And the feedback we had from parents and families, it just really made us realize that this is what a lot of families really wanted from schools, was for us to help them become independent and help them grow up to be adults who could do things for themselves as well.
And that's actually really good insight too. And I think even teachers who aren't special ed can kind of relate with what you're saying, because there's so many things the kids need to know how to do in life, you know, even just like type an email, that isn't really taught in the classroom. And I guess incorporating those life skills is really important to get kids on the right track. And it's interesting that you say all that, because I went from teaching 8th grade to 4th grade. And, you know, like you said, people think it's easier with the younger kids, but it's, you know, you really have to break things down. So I totally see what you're saying there. So how do you find time to, or I guess, how can teachers find time to fit in life skill lessons each day?
So a lot of it can actually be done just in everyday sort of teaching in the classroom. So I know that sometimes we are so short of time, and I appreciate that we are always like running around like headless chickens trying to get all the things done. And I know that a lot of us are understaffed. We aren't always as lucky as I was. We had a team of 6 of us. That was, you know, really lucky for us to have so many staff with 7 students. But I know that's not the same everywhere. So it's just even little things sometimes, like everyone, let's sit down and wash our hands before we do cooking. And then for cooking, and you don't have to have an oven, a kitchen, nothing fancy in your room. It could even be something like, let's make ham sandwiches, let's make cheese sandwiches together, just little things like that. You can still link it to the curriculum as well. So for example, when we used to make sandwiches, you can take in different shaped cookie cutters and still use those for sandwiches. So what shape is your sandwich? How many pieces of sandwich do you have? How many slices of ham do you have? What color is the cheese? So all these little things, they don't have to just be standalone life skills lessons. They can be very much incorporated into the curriculum as well. Another great thing is role play areas. So I know a lot of people like to have these in their classroom, and they have shops and cafes. Even just, I know that we've always wanted our students to have that play that they lead themselves, and we do stand back, but we also like to take the opportunity to jump in with the students as well and just talk to them. And that's another great way to sort of role play life skills as well. Like, what do you want to order from the cafe? But how much is that going to cost? Do you have enough money for that? And just little things like that. It really doesn't have to be anything fancy, nothing like that. But what we did start to do is, as we've really seen the students progress with their life skills, this really benefited other areas of their learning. So what we found was that we were trying to get our students to play with others without actually teaching them how to play. So we wanted them to do turn-taking games because the IEP said they need to take turns, but we never taught them how to play with someone else and how to initiate that. So we took out a Thursday, and our Thursday became a therapy Thursday. And everyone sort of thought we were nuts at first for having a whole day for therapies. But it's Thursday, it's coming to the end of the week. It's not quite Friday. Everyone starts to get a little bit tired and ratty. And what we found was we were getting a lot of behaviors that Thursday. So we stripped it back. We took out all our usual lessons. It was a therapy day, and we done art therapy, music therapy, sensology, all those things. But an hour every Thursday morning was just life skills. It was just a whole life skills hour. And the progress we've seen in just a month blew everything out of the water completely. Like the data that we were able to take. And then the students were so much better. They were so much better behaved. Their communication was up. They were playing better. And it was nothing fancy in that hour. So we just had all our staff take one activity each, and it was a round robin. So I would use the life skills binder that I have on my TPT store. That's actually one of the most loved resources I think I've ever made. And I didn't know how it would go down. It was one of those resources where you're making it thinking, I don't really know how they're going to like this. I don't know if they're going to want to sit with me. And my students loved it. And we used it as an assessment. So we could see, you know, what do they like with their name? Do they recognize their name? Can they write their name? Can they build it? Then we go on to things like, what do you do with dirty clothes? Do you wash it? Do you hang it up? Do you put it away? And all these little activities. And we were able to assess where they were with their understanding. And then we'd have a member of staff who would find socks, and the students would have to match the pairs of socks together. So we're still working on, you know, curriculum sort of angles as well, you know, matching and things. But again, it doesn't have to be fancy. We just wrote home to parents and said, can you send us in anything on this list? We don't care if it's new, if it's old, if it has holes in it. We're grateful for sort of anything that we can get. And we had things like dolls' heads, so we could sort of put, you know, food on the doll's face. Now, what do? You know, do we wash the doll's face? Can we brush it? So all these little things. And that hour, if you can get an hour a week to do that sort of therapy Thursday, I guarantee you will not look back. That will be in your lesson plans for life. And it's such an easy lesson plan to put together as well. And you're giving all your staff something to be in charge of. And I think that does help with staff morale.
That's great. And that is such a good idea to just actually take the time or pre-plan, like just a block of time to focus on that specifically. And life skills are, I mean, they're skills that I think would be pretty easy to kind of align with the curriculum, like the other curriculum, I guess I could say. So that's, yeah, I definitely think that that's beneficial, and probably educators of any subject area, or, you know, mild, moderate, severe special ed could kind of do something like that in the classroom, which brings me in, I'm kind of going to skip forward a question for a second. Do you think that life skills should be taught in the general education classrooms?
100%. So it's not a special education thing solely. And I think that's another thing where a lot of teachers panic that maybe it's just for special education. But you have to consider when these children in general education as well, as they grow older, they're going to be expected to do a lot of things. And, you know, maybe at home, maybe their parents aren't thinking 10 years down the line. You know, it's not something that we all automatically think of. How do we train them to get into a car and drive a car? And how do we teach them responsibility? How do we teach them to manage their money and get a job? And, you know, all those things. I think if you start working on those things at a young age, and then you can just change the skills every year as the students grow. So as the children got older, we would work on things like, how do you make money? What do you need money for? You need to get a job. But how do you get a job? where do you look for a job, all these things. We sort of introduced a coffee cart, and this was something that was a little bit unsure as well, but with the older students, they can apply for a job with it, and it's really teaching them those skills. And then we even progressed it to, now you need to interview for the job. So these are questions you may be asked, and people did think that we were a little bit crazy at first, but all those things, by the end of it, the students were a lot more confident. And, I've shared it around with teachers everywhere, and they're all coming back to me saying just how helpful it was. And the curriculum doesn't include, teach them how to get a job, but this does. And again, you don't have to be completely bombing that curriculum out. The curriculum's still relevant. You can just link to it in different ways.
Yes, and I mean, everything you're bringing up here, I even think back to my schooling, and I wish that somebody would have done that with me. I wish, because no one did. No one really taught us how to find, I mean, in college maybe, but no one taught us how to write up our resume or write a check or balance a budget.
Yeah, and even things like, we were never taught it in school. And then when it comes to having interviews, I was nervous because I'd never been taught how to big myself up, how to talk about my strengths. I couldn't talk about my strengths because I didn't know how to identify my strengths. But if someone had maybe sat down and talked about those things, I would have been like, oh, I can do this. I can go in. I can be confident. I know what to talk about. So, and it doesn't have to be, things that take up a lot of time. Doesn't need to take a lot of prep. It's just little things as well, maybe in morning meeting sessions, just say, tell me something you really like about yourself. And that little thing there, although it doesn't seem like much, that is going to build and build future skills as well. Even things like talking to each other. Like, I don't remember ever being taught how to be a good friend or how to make friends. And those are really, really important life skills to be able to communicate and build relationships. And I don't remember ever being taught that. And, that's another really important skill that I think can be overlooked, because I see so many teachers pulling their hair out in any sort of education, general, special, saying my children won't share because they've never been taught to share. They don't know how to share. And people just assume these skills just develop. But if we can just spend, maybe 1-2 minutes every day sort of talking about these different things, we can really teach them how to share and have different opinions. That's okay. Little things like that.
Yes, I totally agree. And that kind of made me think of a book. I think it's called Brain Rules by John Medina. And he basically talks about how studies show that the biggest indicator of success in children is that emotional regulation, which is everything you're talking about here, sharing, making friends, impulse control, that type of thing. Is, the biggest indicator of success later on in life. And I didn't even think about, you mentioned morning meetings, which a lot of people do. That's like the perfect time to do life skill type lessons, and it doesn't usually take very long. So that's also a really good idea.
Yeah, we used to use these little social skills cards, and it would just be, we'd talk about a scenario. How do you think John feels that his ice cream fell on the floor? And teaching things like empathy and stuff as well. So quick and easy just to add into those morning meeting sessions. And if you have students who like to get creative and come up with their own scenario, like, it makes it more fun and relatable for them as well.
Yes, exactly. And I think that just introspection, like you're talking about, is so important. It's one of the most important skills for kids to learn, all kids. This isn't just special ed or gen ed. It's stuff that I wish I was taught, kind of like I said before. So what is your favorite activity to teach life skills? What's, I guess, your go-to or best strategy that you utilize?
It was definitely the round robin sessions, and I did really like using the adaptive binder because that always gives me a baseline, because not all two students are the same, and that makes sense as well at home. Like one parent may be teaching their child how to use the washing machine just for fun, for helping mum, not realizing how really good that is for helping them understand. So that really gave me an idea where all my students were at, what we needed to work on, things to concentrate on. So I do think that was really helpful. It was hands-on. It had, little Velcro pieces, which my students would go absolutely crazy for. They love anything hands-on. And, it was something that I wasn't fully sure if it would work. And it worked so well, and they just kept trying to pull it out through the week, and we'd be trying to say, that's for Thursday, Therapy Thursday, and we ended up making 2 copies so that they could play with them through the week as well. And it was just nice to see how much they enjoyed, because some of these students were students who couldn't write their name yet, but when we were giving them other activities to work on those things, they were really connecting with it and sort of taking those skills, making them more functional for them. So definitely that. But in a more real life situation, maybe the other one was probably when we used to take them to the laundry room and do their own washing. And that was so much fun. They had an absolute ball. They would all be fighting over who got to go first and who got to wash their washing. But it was really nice to see. And obviously we were there with them and we oversaw everything to make it safe. But
right,
it was just, getting them to collect their dirty clothes. And it would just be little things like our cookery aprons, paint aprons, stuff that probably didn't need washing, but we just done it for a sort of, come on, let's go to the laundry, let's put the washing in the washing machine. We put the soap and stuff in, the staff did. We'd have the students use like pretend ones just because we didn't really want them to, we had a lot of students who like to eat things and we didn't want to risk anything. So they used to put pretend ones in, we'd go behind them, put the real one in. When they're wet, they either put them in the dryer or we'd look outside at the weather. Is it sunny? Is it windy? Let's hang them on the line. And then like hanging them on the line and, they'd be working on their fine motor skills. They'd be laughing. It was just so many skills you can work on. And it didn't take too long out of the day. It takes 2 minutes to throw some bits in the washing machine. They would just push the button and then it's back to work. And then 2 minutes just to chuck it all in the dryer or hang it on the line, and then it's back to work. So it wasn't something that took up a huge amount of time, but they had a blast. That was a lot of fun for them.
Yeah, and that sounds, I mean, it's great that we can find ways to, it's almost like real life when they're going into the laundry room and actually doing laundry. It's very hands-on. And I know you said your round robin was as well, which I think would be really beneficial because you could really one-on-one see where your students are at, and they obviously liked it if you had to make two copies of it.
I know, because they kept losing the pieces. They'd enjoy it so much that they would run off with the pieces to play in like their little home corner and stuff. And because we were using the binder as an assessment, I didn't want to be worrying about where all the pieces were on like Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning. So we made a second copy, and it was funny because we just used to see them walking around with like little pictures of dirty clothes and teeth and stuff. And, we'd have to explain to people, he's not just carrying that around for the sake of carrying on dirty clothes. He just wants to do the activity we put together. But honestly, that was probably the best time that we've had in the classroom. And I don't know, giving the staff each their own activity to do, for me, that just sort of made us all feel like we were equal, and there was no sort of, nobody was better than everyone else. We were all sort of mucking in, doing it together. We were communicating with each other. And I just think giving staff a role and something to be in charge of, we'd often say, next week, choose one activity you want to do, just clear it with me beforehand, just so I can make sure, it's touching things we need to. And they'd go off and they'd be on like Pinterest looking for ideas, or they'd be in their house. And it was just nice that everyone really got involved. And the letters we had from parents, because we'd take the students on field trips every week and we would go shopping, we would go to a restaurant, order food, and we had parents say, I remember one stood out to me because it almost had me in tears one day, and she said, I've been trying to take my child for lunch for 5 years and I've never managed it. And she said, since he came to you, I take him out for lunch every week. And she was like, because that little 10-20 minutes that we were building up on every week meant that he was able to sit and wait and order food. And that was probably the best achievement I sort of felt, that sort of washed everything out the water for me.
Wow. That is, I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? Making the differences, teaching is so hard, but those things kind of make it worth it for us. And that's amazing. That's amazing that he made so much progress and then was able to do that. You don't even think of that as a life skill at first, but it is.
And, a lot of us take for granted as well, going for food with our children. That's something you wouldn't even bat an eyelid at. But for her, to not be able to take her son for food for all those years, and then to be able to take him and he's sitting there and he's waiting and, he's looking through the menu, choosing, what he wants. It was just, for me, that was really nice. That sort of made me feel like what we're doing, it's worth it. It's worth that hour every week. It's worth that 2 minutes every day just to see that end result as well. And we were still working on the curriculum. We love the curriculum. I'm not in any way bashing any curriculum, but I do think you can always find things to add on to that curriculum just to give your students that little bit more opportunity and to get the best of their lives as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And that actually kind of is a good place to go into my next question, which is, why do you think that it's important for educators to trust other educators with curriculum and this type of thing?
So for me, the biggest thing that I've always stood by is that some of the best professional development you can get is from a teacher next door. And I know that when I was new as well, you're like a duck out of water. No matter what anyone says, that first year is the most frightening, awful, overwhelming. Like you never feel good enough in that first year because you're trying to find your feet, and that's okay. And I think by being able to have other teachers, and even if it's not next door, literally next door, it could be a teacher in another school, it could be another country, it could be someone, a teacher blogger you found. Being able to put that trust in someone and use a resource that they believe in is going to make your life so much easier as well. And I think we all sit on Instagram and want the Instagram perfect classroom, the Pinterest worthy class. We're so focused on worrying about that. But I do think that there's an amazing community of teachers and everyone's just able to bring something new to the table. And by being able to trust them, that's just going to make your teaching life so much easier. And you'll have someone to fall back on, you'll have someone to bounce ideas off. But definitely, it was always for me, the teacher next door. And you can go in there and be like, hey, I'm thinking of this, but I'm totally stuck with this. I don't know what to do with this situation. Do I make a social story for it? Do I make a visual for it? But, they could turn around and be like, you know what? Don't try any of those. Try this. This really worked for me. And the experience that other teachers have been through, I don't think you'll ever find two teachers with the same experience ever. Even coming back to life skills, what you may think are life skills, I may not think of life skills for myself, because life skills are individual to every single person. They're just the skills that you need to get the most out of your life. And that is going to be different for you, to me, not so much because we're in different countries, but there's so many different things that we are going to go through. And I don't know, I just think being able to put your trust first in yourself and then other teachers, you are going to be less stressed, your classroom's going to run a lot smoother, and just trust that everything you see on Instagram, you don't see the full story. That perfect picture of the classroom, you don't see what happened 5 minutes after that perfect photo. So try not to fall into that Instagram perfect, Pinterest perfect hole.
Yes, I totally agree. And I've even seen teachers, post things where, hey, I usually look Instagram perfect, but this is what my desk actually looks like, and then they'll show a picture of their desk and it's just like a mess, or whatever. But you're right, it's just the teacher next door or the teacher down the hall or even in another grade level. We have the experience, and we all have something to bring to the table. Even new teachers, even if you're in your first year, I mean, you're fresh out of college, and you have all the training, you just got all the training that older teachers might not have, remembered.
Yeah, there's new training every year, and even work experience, but also life experience as well. Like I was able to bring to the table, when we thought a student was colorblind, because I have that with my partner. Now that may not seem relevant. That's not something I put on, when I'm applying for a job. That's not something I would broadcast. But that one little part of my life experience that could help another teacher who's like, why can't my student see this? Why can't they color match? And instantly I'm like, I can help you with that because I have the experience in that. And little things like that, you don't know life experiences. Like you say, people who are newly qualified, they're having access to new training opportunities and new research that's coming to light. And so I do think, when a new teacher goes into a school, if you're feeling anxious, especially when you meet a teacher then who's been there for 40 years and maybe she's got all the bells and whistles, all the awards, just don't feel any less of a teacher than she is, because she may really appreciate you as well, or he may, just because you can bring something new. But definitely the teacher next door every time for me. That is my one saying I always go to, is just find that teacher friend, because they'll be worth their weight in gold.
Yes, I totally agree. And I feel like probably all the viewers can relate to that. I feel like that's just something that kind of naturally happens, and probably should happen more. We shouldn't feel so isolated all the time. But definitely, trusting the person with experience, or even just their life experience. So, Nikki, what is the best way to contact you if anyone has any questions or wants to talk to you about anything we've talked about, or maybe wants to get their hands on maybe like a social book, is that, or social stories book,
Yes,
right?
so we do use
Yes.
them. Those have always worked so well for us. But you can find me on pretty much every social media, just teaching autism. I'm on TPT, teaching autism. My website is teachingautism.co.uk, and that's open worldwide. I know I can sound a little bit Welsh and like I'm on my own here in the UK, but we are a worldwide business, and my email is always open for anyone as well. And like you said earlier, where we were talking about the Instagram perfect things as well, I am not an Instagram, Pinterest perfect person. I've tried to share that recently on my Instagram stories, which I know you were really sweet about when I shared my morning face with everyone. But, if you want to find me on Instagram, teaching autism, and I'm always doing little Q&As on my stories. You can find them on my highlights as well, just where I talk about different things. But I'll also give you some links as well to some blog posts I have about life skills. So just where I talk about what life skills are, the 6 key areas of them, just for people who aren't quite sure what life skills is as a whole.
Okay, great. And I will put those in the description, links to all that in the description, so that it's easily accessible for everybody to find. I think that the last thing I would like to ask is, what is the main idea, or I guess, what do you want to leave the viewers with in general after talking about life skills?
Probably just to try it, even if you think it's going to go awful, if you think it's going to be a fail, if everyone around you says it's going to be awful, just try it anyway, because we've all been there. We've all thought of things that we think are going to be awful and they've turned out amazing, the same way we've all thought something's going to be amazing and our students just did not like it. Yes. So just trust yourself, trust your staff, feel confident to sort of have your staff in charge of different areas of life skills, and that will really help your classroom as a whole as well, because everyone will sort of feel like you trust them with an area as well, and like they can have that responsibility, and that's great for that staff morale in the classroom. But just try it. Honestly, it's so worth a go. And if one thing doesn't work, maybe you don't have access to a washing machine, try something printed out, and just ask parents to send in, like we did, old socks that nobody really wants anymore, and just match them together, put them on clothing pegs. But honestly, just be confident in yourself and try it. That's my one piece of advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you for your time and being one of the first guests on Expert Educators. And I am so glad that you provided our viewers with so many valuable tips and information about just teaching life skills in general. So thank you. And
Thank you so much for having me, Chloe. It's been lovely coming on and talking to you.
All right.